Walk outside into almost any American lawn and look down. Not at the grass people mow, water, fertilize, and protect like a piece of property, but at the small plants growing quietly between the blades. In the damp shaded places near the soil, you may see little heart-shaped leaves spreading close to the ground. Most people do not recognize them. Some people see them and think only one thing: weed. But this plant is not ordinary. It is wild violet, also called sweet violet, and according to the source text, its leaves contain about 130 milligrams of vitamin C per 100 grams, more than twice the vitamin C found in an orange. Yet you will not usually find it in a grocery store. You will not usually find it in a pharmacy. You will find it growing in lawns while many homeowners pay money to kill it. The contradiction becomes even stranger. The original text describes research from Uppsala University in Sweden, where compounds from violet were studied in laboratory tests against 10 different types of human cancer cell lines. This does not mean violet is a cure, and it should never replace medical treatment, but it does prove one thing clearly. This plant was never just a useless lawn weed. For centuries, people knew its name. They used it, studied it, and respected it. Today, many people spray it before they ever ask what it is. So how did a plant with nutrition, history, and scientific interest become something modern lawn culture teaches people to hate? Part 1, a medicine with more than 2,000 years of history. Long before wild violet was treated as a lawn problem, it was part of the medical memory of the ancient world. In the source text, the story begins in ancient Greece, roughly 2,400 years ago, with Hippocrates, the physician whose name became tied to the foundations of Western medicine. He wrote about a plant the Greeks called ion, using it for inflammation, headaches, and what were described as hot swellings, including tumors and growths that medicine at the time had few ways to treat. That detail matters because violet was not presented as a strange folk belief hiding at the edge of history. It sat beside other important ancient remedies, such as opium poppy, willow bark, and hellebore. It was part of the working medicine of its time. Centuries later, the Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder also wrote about violet. According to the original text, he described violet root in vinegar as useful for gout and disorders of the spleen, and he considered it one of the great medicines of the ancient world. Then came Dioscorides, the Greek physician whose De Materia Medica became one of Europe's standard medical references for about 500 years. In that tradition, sweet violet remained a plant physicians were expected to recognize, and the knowledge did not stay in one place. Saxon monastic herbals listed it. Medieval Persian medicine adopted it. Ayurvedic texts in India included it under the name Banafsha, a name still used today. By the time Maud Grieve published A Modern Herbal in 1931, violet had already been part of human medicine for more than 2 millennia. It was not new, it was not rare. It was remembered across cultures until the modern world slowly stopped listening. Part 2, from medicine and perfume to industrial replacement. By the early 20th century, violet had not disappeared yet. In 1931, British herbalist Maud Grieve published A Modern Herbal, and in her entry on sweet violet, she recorded information that had already been circulating in British medical journals for years. The source text mentions a documented case of a man with colon cancer who was given a strong daily infusion of violet leaf tea made from a patch of violets about 100 square feet in size. Within 9 weeks, according to that report, his cancer was in remission. Grieve did not present it as a miracle. She recorded it as clinical information, along with other early reports involving tumors of the breast, throat, stomach, and skin. But just as violet's medical history was still being remembered, its economic world was changing. For much of the 19th century, sweet violet was one of Europe's most commercially cultivated medicinal flowers. In Toulouse, France, entire hillsides were covered with violet fields. In Parma, Italy, growers produced violet essence that could command very high prices. The plant had 2 markets at once: medicine and perfume. Queen Victoria's perfumers used violet absolute in royal formulations, and the scent became one of the great fragrances of the Victorian era. Then the laboratory changed everything. In 1893, 2 German chemists, Ferdinand Tiemann and Paul Kruger, synthesized ionone, the aromatic compound linked to violet's scent. Real violet absolute required thousands of flowers and many human hands. Synthetic ionone required industrial chemistry and a patent. Within decades, the living flower lost its commercial power. The scent could be owned, scaled, and sold without the plant itself. And once industry no longer needed the violet, the plant began slipping out of memory. Part 3, Why the Herbicide Industry Wanted Violet Gone. After violet lost much of its commercial value in perfume, another force began shaping how people saw it: the modern lawn. In the United States, the source text connects this shift to the rise of chemical herbicides after World War II. In 1941, the United States Department of Agriculture funded research into synthetic plant hormones that could destroy broadleaf plants. These compounds caused certain plants to grow themselves to death. After the war, one of the most successful formulations was released commercially, and by 1947, it was being marketed to American homeowners as a solution for dandelions, clover, and stubborn, purple-flowered plants that refused to disappear from lawns. That was when violet's identity changed in the public mind. It was no longer an old medicinal plant growing freely in the yard. It became a lawn enemy, a flaw in the perfect green surface. But violet was not easy to kill. Its waxy leaves helped protect it, and its deep rhizomes allowed it to return even after repeated attempts to remove it. The herbicide companies responded with stronger and more specialized chemicals, including products aimed at difficult perennial broadleaf weeds in managed turfgrass systems. The source text describes how, by 2024, Penn State University Extension had published guidance on wild violet control in turfgrass, recommending repeated chemical applications. It also mentions commercial products combining multiple herbicides in one formula to penetrate violet's leaf surface. And this is the strange reversal. A plant used for centuries in medicine became a target of expensive lawn chemicals. A plant that grew for free became something people paid to destroy. The question is, if violet grows without permission, cannot be patented, and returns every year, who benefits when people are taught to see it only as a weed? Part 4. Modern science rediscovers what the old world remembered. The most important part of the violet story did not end in ancient herbals or Victorian perfume fields. It returned through modern research. In 1999, according to the source text, researchers at Uppsala University in Sweden began studying a group of plant proteins called cyclotides. These proteins are unusual because they are built in a ring-like structure that makes them extremely stable. They can resist boiling water, stomach acid, and many enzymes that would normally break down ordinary proteins. And when researchers looked for rich, natural sources of these compounds, they found something remarkable. Sweet violet was one of the richest sources on Earth. In 2002, the team published findings in Molecular Cancer Therapeutics. They tested 3 cyclotides taken from common violets against 10 different human tumor cell lines, including lung cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer, and leukemia. The most potent compound, called cycloviolacin O2, showed activity at very low concentrations. The original text explains that its mechanism was different from many familiar cancer drugs. It did not work by blocking cell division or interfering with DNA replication. Instead, it acted on the membrane of the tumor cell, damaging it until the cell ruptured. This is important, but it must be understood carefully. These were laboratory studies, not proof that eating violet cures cancer. The point is not to turn violet into a miracle claim. The point is that a plant dismissed as a lawnweed became a subject of serious scientific investigation. And the research did not stop there. The source text mentions later studies involving drug-resistant breast cancer cells in 2010, cervical cancer cells in 2016, tumor proliferation in mice in 2018, and computational screening of violet cyclotides in 2020 against a checkpoint protein connected to modern cancer immunotherapy. Across decades of research, the same pattern appears again and again. The plant people were told to kill still carried biological complexity worth studying. Part 5. The nutrients hidden in the leaves and flowers. The anti-tumor research is only one part of the violet story. The source text makes it clear that wild violet also contains a wide range of nutrients and plant compounds that help explain why it stayed in traditional medicine for so long. One of those compounds is rutin, a flavonoid associated with supporting capillary walls. That connection helps explain why violet leaves were traditionally used for bruising, fragile skin, varicose veins, and problems involving delicate blood vessels. The leaves also contain salicylic acid, the natural parent compound connected to aspirin, which helps explain why violet poultices were used for pain and inflammation across many generations. Then there is the soothing quality of the leaf itself. The source text describes its soluble fiber as useful for dry coughs and cholesterol. It also says violet leaves contain twice the vitamin A of spinach, along with the vitamin C that made the opening of this story so surprising, and the flowers contain anthocyanins, the same antioxidant pigments that give deep-colored berries their value in the modern health market. That is why contemporary herbalists in the United Kingdom still recommend violet leaves for swollen lymph nodes, fibrocystic breast tissue, and congestion of the glands. Whether ancient, medieval, or modern, the pattern is consistent. People kept returning to this small plant because it did more than decorate the lawn. Part 6. How to recognize, harvest, and use violet. To recognize wild violet, start with the leaves. The source text describes them as heart-shaped, growing close to the ground, usually in moist, shaded soil. When mature, the leaves can be about the size of a silver dollar, with a slight cupping toward the center. The flowers usually appear in April and May, and both the common blue violet of North America and the European sweet violet are described as edible and medicinal. But there is one important warning. The roots should not be eaten. The parts traditionally used are the leaves and flowers. The best time to harvest the young leaves is early spring. Instead of pulling the plant from the ground, use kitchen scissors and cut only what you need. This leaves the rhizome undisturbed, allowing the plant to return again the following year. The source text also gives a clear harvesting rule. Take no more than 1/3 of any patch. For a simple spring tonic, the traditional preparation is gentle. Pack a jar loosely with fresh violet leaves, cover them with water just off the boil, and let the mixture steep overnight. In the morning, strain it and drink 1 cup a day through spring. For lymphatic and anti-inflammatory use, the source text describes a stronger external preparation. Fill a jar with fresh leaves, cover them with high-quality olive oil, and let it sit in a warm place for 6 weeks. After straining, the oil is traditionally applied externally to swollen glands and bruises. The flowers can also be eaten raw in salads or steeped in vinegar, creating the bright purple herbal infusion long used in parts of France and Italy. In the end, the wild violet story is not really about a rare plant. It is about a common plant that became invisible. It was known in the time of Hippocrates. It was recorded by Pliny the Elder. It was cataloged by Dioscorides. It appeared in old herbals, household traditions, medical reports, perfume fields, and modern laboratory research. For more than 2,000 years, people recognized it as something useful. Then the modern lawn turned it into a problem. That is the deepest irony. Wild violet does not need to be planted every season. It does not need fertilizer. It spreads by rhizomes, returns year after year, and can keep producing if a patch is left alone in a shaded corner of the yard. It asks for almost nothing, except that people stop poisoning it. The plant never truly disappeared. It kept growing under fences, beside sidewalks, and between the blades of grass. The only thing that changed was the way people looked at it. A flower once remembered by physicians and families became a weed on a herbicide label. A plant with a long medicinal history became something homeowners paid to destroy. And maybe that is the lesson hiding in plain sight. Sometimes the most valuable thing in your yard is not the perfect grass. It is the small plant you were taught to hate before you ever learned its name. Violet never left. We forgot.